Greetings, my friends. This is Chris Crisecci with another edition of the History of Blanchett Musicals. Today, we'll look at the musicals of the 1980s, covering the last three directed by Sister Teresina, two from Diane Kelly, one from Judy Pylon, two directed by Margaret Holland Newcomb, and then the beginning of the Joanne Vetter era. The decade begins with Sister Teresina directing the 1959 musical, The Sound of Music. The musical is a product of Rodgers and Hammerstein, with book by Howard Lindsay and Russell Krauss. It was performed at the Seattle Center Playhouse. The following year, 1981, Sister Teresina returned to the Seattle Center Playhouse with another Rodgers and Hammerstein musical, this time Oklahoma, which was previously performed as Blanchett's first musical in 1960 under the direction of Maury Sheridan. 1982 marked Sister Teresina's eighth and final musical as director. Bishop Blanchett's cast and crews performed the 1950 classic Guys and Dolls in the Seattle Center Playhouse. Blanchett had performed this musical previously in 1974 and would do so again in 2018. In 1983, new director Diane Kelly brought Camelot, a 1960 musical written by Frederick Loewe and Alan J. Lerner, to the stage of the Seattle Center Playhouse. The show had been performed previously in 1967 under the direction of Dr. Maury Sheridan. 1984's production of the Leonard Bernstein-Stephen Sondheim classic West Side Story was the second and final musical directed by Diane Kelly. The show, based loosely on William Shakespeare's play Romeo and Juliet, was performed at the Seattle Center Playhouse. Judy Pylon directed her only Blanchett musical in 1985 when she brought the 1954 hit Pajama Game to the Seattle Center Playhouse. The musical was based on the 1953 novel 7.5 Cents by Richard Bissell. 1986 saw Margaret Holland Newcomb make her directorial debut with the 1947 musical Finian's Rainbow. The Burton Lane and E.Y. Harbug work would be the last show that Blanchett would perform at the Seattle Center Playhouse. In 1987, Margaret Holland Newcomb brought her cast and crews to Shoreline Community College to perform the 1964 classic hit Fiddler on the Roof. Blanchett had previously performed the work in 1976 under the direction of Sister Teresina, and would do so again in 1988 with Joe Vetter. In 1988, new director Joanne Vetter brought My Fair Lady to Shorecrest High School's auditorium. The 1956 Tony Award winner was the first of 13 shows to be directed by Vetter. The musical was written by Frederick Loewe and Alan J. Lerner and was adapted from a George Bernard Shaw play, Pygmalion. Blanchett had previously produced My Fair Lady in 1965 and 1977. Because of scheduling problems, the musical returned to campus for the first time since the early 1960s, when Joanne Vetter's cast and crew performed Hello Dolly in the Blanchett Gym. Blanchett first performed this musical in 1972 with Maurice Sheridan at the helm. And that brings us to the end of the 1980s. Be sure to catch this year's musical, All Shook Up, at the Moore Theater from April 28th to April 30th. Tickets are now on sale at stgpresents.org or at the Paramount box office. We'll see you at the Moore.